Every year, Social Security changes, and 2026 is one of those years where it actually matters. And when you're thinking about Social Security and some of the changes, we'll talk about things like your higher taxes, talk about higher income limits. We'll discuss how some will be able to receive more benefits and some will have more benefits withheld. And whether you're still working, you're retired, or you're planning on retiring really soon, this is definitely something that makes sense for you to pay attention to. The plan today is to go through the Social Security data where they tell us what the changes are, to go through the numbers with as little panic and politics and concern and freaking out as possible, that we just want to talk about the data and make the decisions from there. I'll explain it to you in plain English, and then we'll be able to discuss a couple of things that is very important for you when it comes to making decisions on how you should maximize and optimize your own Social Security for you to have a wealthy retirement. So you can see we're going to go to the horse's mouth. We're here on the Social Security website, and they're giving us the 2026 Social Security changes. Our cost of living adjustment, that is what we use to keep up with inflation. And the important thing to remember when you talk about Social Security having cost of living adjustments, which is very nice, when you talk about pensions and some annuities that people have that also have cost of living adjustments, which are also very nice, you do still have to plan for the current year. So this is a look back where we said, hey, inflation in 2025 was 3%. So in 2026, we're going to raise your benefits by 3%. But if inflation in 2026 is 10%, then you have to figure out what to do that whole year. And then you hope in January 2027, they give you a 10% raise. And you can see why being a year behind on that cost of living adjustment is something that we do need to consider. We shouldn't be saying, well, I have a cost of living adjustment, so I don't have to worry about it. I'll always be able to afford my lifestyle. Yes, in the long run, you probably will be able to afford your lifestyle. We're not really getting into the nuances of what metrics we're using for the cost of living adjustments. For example, we know that the cost of healthcare normally outpaces traditional means of inflation. We know the cost of energy typically can go up a little bit more as well. So there are some things that aren't counted in this cost of living, but on the bright side, it is an increase that is built into our Social Security benefits. And I do want to make sure that you have kind of an eyes wide open view more than the doom and gloom. It is just the fact that you are going to have the increase the year after you've already paid all of those bills with the higher cost. And so in 2026, we're expecting a 2.8% COLA increase, and then we'll go into what some of those numbers will look like. You can see that the taxes remain the exact same, 7.65% in 2025, 7.65% in 2026. If you're self-employed, the only difference is, the reason it's 15.3 is because you're paying both halves. So if you're an employee, you pay half of it, and then your employer pays half of it, which totals that 15.3%. If you're the employer and the employee, well, guess what? You pay both sides of it. So you pay the 15.3%. You're probably not as concerned about the breakdown of it, but if you were, what we're saying is that 6.2% goes to Social Security, and we're saying that 1.45% is actually going to go towards Medicare, and that the OASID is the Old Age Survivors Disability Insurance. So that's what the Social Security is, talking about literally named, right? And then you have your Medicare portion, which is for us when we get 65 and older, that there's a percentage that goes towards that. And we can see as we move towards the amount that is taxable, that amount is going up, even though our earnings haven't gone up by that much. So if you consider the fact that our earnings, let's just say that our earnings went up by that 2.8%, right? So we'll say that we live in a very nice utopian perfect world where if the cost of everything goes up by 3%, then everybody got a 3% raise. This increase is not 3%. This increase is more than 3%. So we're going to find that more of our earnings is going to be taxable. And so it was $176,100, which means that is the amount that would be taxed at that 6.2%. And then we can see that increased to $184,500. And then that would have been the amount that would have been taxed at that Social Security portion only. And when it comes to the Medicare portion, we can see that that's that 1.45%, that amount has no limit. You're going to be taxed on that no matter what. In fact, we'll even go a step further where there's a little bit of an extra little tax on it, where if you make more than $200,000 or $250,000 as a couple, then you have that additional 1%. It's like 0.9%, but I just say 1%. And then you have that's added on as well. And so that's not included, but you would recognize that you're going to have that extra tax that's paid on. When you see the quarter of coverage, what we're saying is you have 4 quarters to create 1 year of Social Security benefits, and that you want to obviously qualify for Social Security. And whether you're on a Social Security optimization plan where you're looked at the different years and you said, hey, in my early career I had some low income years, I want to earn some more credits to replace some of those so that my best 35 years is a phenomenal 35 years high income, so that way I have a higher Social Security benefit. If you're someone that's thinking about that, then this probably doesn't matter to you as much. But if you just simply are someone that's on the other end where you're like, I don't know that I've even qualified, that I don't know if I have all the credits. And I'll put a link to another video where I go through how to make sure you have all the Social Security credits to make sure you qualify for your benefits. What we're saying here is to receive a quarter of coverage, you would have had to at least have generated $1,810. And that amount is going to increase to $1,890. That is the amount that you would have had to have made. When you're looking at the retirement earnings test exempt amounts, what we are saying is if you are under the full retirement age, then for most of you that's going to be 67. The number has adjustments, so it will be different. You want to make sure you know what yours are. That if you are making $23,400 a year and under, then it's kind of like you're okay, don't worry about it. But if you make more than that, then that means that you would have had $1 withheld for every $2 in earnings above that limit. And that limit went up from $23,400 to $24,480, which was $1,950 a month, to $2,040 a month. That if you make more than that, then expect to have your Social Security benefits withheld if you also have started taking your Social Security benefits. Now, if you are within the year that you reach full retirement age, so if you're someone who turns 67 in 2026, that's your full retirement age for this example, but your birthday is in like November, then you still have the penalty, it's just not as steep. So you can see that the amount increased to $62,160 a year, which is $5,180 a month. And then 2026 is going to be $65,160 a year, which is $5,430 a month. That if that is your situation where you're going to turn 67 in 2026, it's just later on in the year, then you would have $1 withheld for every $3 over the earnings. So you've increased what the amount is as far as the threshold, and then I also decreased what the penalty is. So instead of it being 1 for every $2 over, it's 1 for every $3 over. Once you actually hit your full retirement age, you hit the month of your full retirement age, then you're good to go. You have none of those penalties. You have nothing to worry about. It is important to mention that these penalties aren't forever penalties, that you get your Social Security recalculated when everything is said and done, and you will receive back that through an increase in the monthly payments that you would receive in Social Security, but they are going to take it in the early going, so it's important to know. When you move into your Social Security disability thresholds, what we're saying is there are some people that have a disability that receive Social Security, special needs, or there's someone in your family or a close friend or someone around you with special needs and they do work. It's important to keep in mind how much they make per month. Now, obviously, if it's a friend, probably not. But if it's a family, you do want to keep that in mind because you could lose that Social Security disability benefit if you make more than what the threshold is. So if you are non-blind, that threshold is $1,620 a month, and it's going to increase to $1,690 a month. If you are blind, it's $2,700 a month, and that will increase to $2,830 a month. And then the trial work period is $1,160, and that's going to increase to $1,210. Now, bring to your attention that this is another one of those times where that increase is actually more than 3%, that this is more than 3% of an increase. Now, in this time, it actually works in the favor of the individual, where now I can make more money and not lose my benefits. So this is probably one that we wouldn't be complaining about, but you will notice that sometimes the number goes up by more than COLA, sometimes the number goes up by COLA, and sometimes the number goes up by less than COLA. And that we do want to kind of keep this in mind and recognize what's going on. Is the government trying to put a fast one on me? Maybe, maybe not. Is it in my benefit? Does it cost me more? I want to be mindful because if I'm going to have an increase in my taxes or a decrease in my benefits because of these threshold changes, I should be aware of these thresholds and making sure that I'm being very mindful in my strategy and the plan I'm putting in place. When you see the maximum Social Security benefit, if you reach full retirement age, that's $4,018 a month. That's going to increase to $4,152 a month. The SSI federal payment standard, I don't know why they would do that, because for most of us, when we see SSI, we think Social Security insurance. But the SSI, you'll notice that we actually been saying Social Security throughout, right? Social Security, Social Security. So then what's that SSI? This is the Supplemental Security Income, which is a needs-based program, which is why it's sort of down here in the disability section. So if you have a need-based income, then this is going to be the maximum that you're able to receive. So as an individual, the maximum that you could have received was $967. The maximum will now be $994. If you're a couple, the number was $1,450, and it will now be $1,491. If you look at the SSI resource limit, that's just essentially assets that I have, that if you are taking care of someone with special needs, you want to be very mindful of gifts and inheritances and different things, because that amount did not go up. And it's a crazy low number. That if you are receiving a needs-based income, so you have the Supplemental Security Income, and you're receiving $500 a month, whatever the amount is, that if you have more than $2,000 in your savings account, that you would no longer qualify for that monthly income. And you and I might say, well, I can understand on the one end, because it does say that the majority of Americans struggle to have $1,000 in a savings account. But on the other end, if you did have these benefits and then someone wanted to give something to you where they just were like, hey, you know what, I know that times are tough and you're struggling, yada, yada. And they're just like, hey, here's $1,000, here's $2,000, and you don't get rid of it and the government finds out, they're going to say, oh, you have too much now in your savings account. You clearly don't have a need anymore, and it's gone. So that's what this is. And you'll see that that amount did not go up, which is very important. And for a couple, this one is $3,000, and that is not a one for one where it's like 2,000 and 4,000, that it's like 1.5. And so for a couple, that's actually a tougher number, but that's what it is. It did not change at all, which again, I want to bring to your attention, because we can get caught up on these, where if you are someone that has an income that's based on certain needs, and then all of a sudden you have this extra money, maybe you were saving up for, I don't know, like to get your car fixed or something. Well, I'm sorry, there's a resource limit, and if they see it, then you could possibly lose your benefits. And for the SSI student inclusion, remember, we're not saying Social Security. The SSI is Supplemental Security Income. So we're talking about students who are basically full-time under 22. For the most part, that would mean that you don't actually have a job and able to generate a certain amount of money because you're going to school full-time. That is your job. So most of the time, you actually qualify for a lot of these needs-based programs. That you can have grants and scholarships and different things to help you keep the lights on. What we're saying here is the same idea, that if your monthly limit is $2,350, your monthly limit goes up to $2,410, and then your annual limit, how much you can make in a year, went from $9,460 to $9,730. Your estimated average monthly Social Security benefits payable in January 2026. So we can see before the 2.8% COLA, and we can see after the 2.8% COLA, right? So this is, right, just going up by that amount. So all retired people, the average person that's retired will receive $2,000 a month. That the average couple retired, where they both have benefits, on average, they receive about $3,200 a month. That if you're a widowed mother and 2 children, so between those double benefits, you would receive about $4,000 a month. That if you're an aged widow or widower alone, that you'll receive about $1,900 a month. That if your situation is a disabled worker, spouse, and 1 or more children, that you would receive about $2,900 a month, right, on average. And for all disabled workers, on average, they will receive $1,630 per month, and that is an increase from $1,586 per month. And for a lot of people, we would say that this is beneficial, this is very helpful, but is it enough on its own? And most people will say no, based on my life and the things that I need. If that is the case for you, I invite you to take a free retirement income fitness score quiz. It takes about 3 minutes. I have a handful of questions, and you'll know whether or not your income is ready to work so that you don't have to. So here's the bottom line. Social Security is adjusting. Taxes are creeping up. Benefits are going up even slower. The biggest mistake that I see people make is having one Social Security stream of income instead of having multiple streams. That Social Security is a great foundation, but it's not the whole house. If you want to know how these 2026 changes affects your own unique retirement situation, whether you want to talk about when to file, how much to expect, and how to avoid costly mistakes, that's all we do with retirement planning. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can schedule some time on the calendar for a complimentary review. As always, I'm Dre Griggs, founder of Obsidian Wisdom, where we help you to have more wisdom and less worry. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.